Welcome to the Midnight Firetales. On tonight's episode, Oddnon brings us stories of police and racism in Michigan. And art is featured by the court doodler, MouseLander.
I think it's the only way we can actually cope with the conditions right now. You know, we have to continuously talk about how horrid the police state is, and how
the thing that Mr. Rogers allegedly said is, look for the helpers. Sitting here with my Golden Girls mug. Check this out. You're gonna love this. It says, "Keep calm and eat cheesecake."
Welcome in, Oddnon. I hope you had a wonderful day, my friend, or as good of a week as you could living in the capitalist hellscape. Welcome in. Introduce yourself. Tell everyone who you are.
So my name is Oddnon. I am a tabletop role-playing content creator. I also stream on Twitch video games, and I do it poorly, and I like it that way. I'm also a comic book author. My best friend of like 30 years draws it and co-writes with me, and it's a horror comedy comic in the vein of the old horror exploitation films. It is ridiculous and stupid, and it is so much fun to write. And that's what I do. So I'm a content creator, comic author, live streamer, tabletop role-playing game content creator, and a big old commie leftist pinko scum person. And you can follow me on Twitter if you so choose. That's how I'm feeling today. How's everyone else doing?
I tell you, this week has totally kicked my ass.
I can't even. I literally, I've been so angry. And it sounds bad. Because it sounds like I haven't been angry before. But with these repeated crises and all this stuff, it's like you get mad. I was furious with George Floyd, and then the next tragedy, furious, and so on and so on and so on and so on. And I'm just getting to this point where I don't even know what the fuck to do. Besides organizing and stuff, which is what we should be doing. It's so bleak, and it's really hard to not take the black pill on it.
When I met my partner, who is mixed, she always had kind of a similar realm, because she gets treated like she's not black, and she gets treated like she's not white. She gets put in, because she's mixed. It puts her in a spot where she kind of doesn't belong anywhere in her extension, and so her position is different too, because her dad was a radical. Her dad was a part of the Black Panthers, and raised her very discriminatorily as well. And so she has this view that, really just, kind of despises how humanity just treats each other in itself. So
I have a lot to say about that when you're done. Yeah.
Yeah. And as I've been with her, then I've seen people be racist towards both aspects of it. For her being mixed, for her being white, for her being not black, or for her being black, and just, it's wild, because it seems like it's been nothing but turned up. The more I've gotten to know her and be with her, it's it's honestly when my police interactions went from just typical police bullying to actually profiling, trying to punish me for racist reasons.
Yeah. So I have a lot of experience with that personally. And as much as I hate to say it, and I might be criticized for saying it this way. But it does, for me, happen in both communities. So there's much more in like the what do I say to not be banned on Twitch? The melanin deficient community and the Arab community. In the melanin deficient community, the everything that I'm subjected to is like way worse, because if you put me in a room full of those people, I look white, and I can blend in with them, but my name is, Oddnon is a phonetic spelling of my real name. And as soon as somebody finds out what my name is, there's a 50-50 shot if it's going to be, oh, that's so cool, tell me about that, or it's going to all of a sudden be this, like, they treat me differently, or they're outright hostile towards me, both of which have happened. However, in the Arabic community, there is some of that goes the other way, much, much, much less. And from people that I would never want to associate with, because unfortunately there's shitty people in all walks of life where, I'm not Arab enough, to be considered Arab. So in that same way you're talking about your partner is, I don't want to equate it to being black, because that's a very different experience, or Latin or whatever is a very different experience from what I experience. I think they have it way worse, but there is that whole thing that it's like you're either too white to be Arab or you're too Arab to be white, and there's no way to like navigate that in a way that is meaningful or constructive. Yeah.
Oh yeah. I mean, I'll say it's only been the most 2 more recent years where I have identified how even the title of whiteness strips my actual identity away from me. And I've been trying to disassociate myself with it as much as possible.
Especially with being Irish. That's
yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. And my Irish heritage is something that I actually have knowledge of, which is unique in itself, because, well, we suffered a lot of US imperialistic hatred as well. I mean, I'm a descendant of the St. Patrick Battalion, which were a segment of Irish soldier or Irish part of the Irish part of the United States Army. There were Irish soldiers in the US Army during the Mexican-American War who broke off from the US to fight against the US to protect the indigenous people down there, because they believed the war was unjust. And when the war was all settled, the Mexican-American War is a fucking terrifying thought, because you see how little it's taught in schools because of how bad our position is in it. Yeah. At the time, the United States was an established country continuing its colonization across the land, while Mexico had been just established freedom from Spain. And that wasn't even really a country, but more like a bunch of different small governments trying to function, just as they have been liberated from Spain's ridiculous tirade. And of course, the United States wants to come in and steal all their land and argue over what it is, and just, openly genocide anyone who disagrees. And so, having that piece,
There's an interesting parallel there with my father. And I don't want to talk about my family too much because they're very not online, and I don't wish them to be. But when I was younger, my father is the Syrian person in the family, so to speak. And my parents divorced when I was like very, very young. And I was telling you earlier, like to the point where like I was so young that I just learned that dad was living somewhere else, and like it was totes cool because now I had like 2 houses to live in. I thought it was fucking dope. Like honestly, when I was a kid, I got 2 bedrooms. Like holy hell, you know. But he was like anti-Israel, 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 and I have Palestinian family. When I grew up, or we have like lineages that go to Palestine, I'd have to ask him like for the specifics. We don't talk about it much because it bums him out. But you know, I grew up, you know, with this anti-Israel, 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 and for most of my life, I was like, oh, this is super anti-Semitic. You know, this is really shitty. Why would my dad think that? You know, and then as I got older and started to do the research and stuff, and because my dad has like tons of friends that are Jewish, was one of the things that tipped me off. I hate to be like my black friend about it, but that's what, you know, tipped me off to like read into it. And yeah, it's kind of that same. My thoughts are kind of disjointed, but it's kind of that same thing where, you know, you don't really, it's not taught to you.
No.
You know, when I
no.
was in school, we had Israel was in the history books, and I got to keep my history book from high school. And like 4 or 5 years ago, when we moved, I was throwing stuff away, and I was just flipping through it because it was a book from like 2001 or 2002. And the book just straight up says, you know, Israel is a state that is defending themselves against an incumbent force. You know, talking about like Hamas and all that stuff. They don't ever talk about the part where it was taken over and the Balfour Declaration and all the. They don't talk about that. So,
how anytime there was an established peaceful act that that they would destroy it, so that the only one that was left was violent defense. That they left no other alternative but violent defense.
Exactly. And so all of my learning like was colored by, you know, this kind of bullshit that we were taught in school. Like I cannot express that enough. Is like when they're talking about this weird, I don't mean to take this off into like hippy dippy land or whatever, but this this woke education whatever bullshit, it doesn't stand to reason, because if you crack open any history book that the majority of schools have right now, because they're so underfunded, they have no money for new books. These are books that are teaching that, you know, Columbus came here peacefully to like trade with the natives, and Thanksgiving was a super chill, you know, thing, and all this kind of stuff. And I
still today, I have to deal with my kid being taught the Columbus myth and the Thanksgiving myth every year. So, and she's, you know, she's been in school for 4 years. I've been having to deal with it for 4 years.
Yeah, I can't do it.
No, it's terrible. No. So anyways, I mean, in my perspective here, I'm thinking, wow, you're so lucky because see, I grew up Catholic and Christian, and of course we get fed to the world of tomorrow. We get fed the Magog myth. You know, the second coming.
In Islam too.
And so I mean, I remember staying up late with my mom and her being, you know, tweaking because, you know, drug addiction sucks. And she would having this existential crisis of kind of like calculating how the end of the world is happening because the war's happening in Israel, and all it is going to take is one bomb to blow up the Dome of the Rock and bring the second coming of Jesus.
There's in Islam, they have a similar thing. If you talk to some weirdo like extremist fuckers that are complete assholes, their idea is that Magog is the Chinese from the book, and so the Magog, the Chinese, are going to take that mantle and they're going to bomb the Middle East to put, you know, to do the whole thing. Fucking wild.
Yeah. So, I mean, like, I didn't really, and because I stayed away from a lot of global politics up until a couple of years ago, Most of anything I had learned was just, through my personal experiences. And the thing that fucking hit me for the Israel thing that made me aware of it was the Empire Files releasing that documentary. I had never I never watched anything really on it before. I had no opinion of it before because, like I said, the only thing I knew was the shit my mom told me. And I was like, oh man, I don't want to deal with no religious shit. I was still too busy like fighting the fact that I didn't like what Christianity had done to me to even want to even think about it. Right. It's just like, nope, fuck that shit. I don't want to talk about it. So like, yeah, the Empire Files documentary was when it brought that holy shit moment of, oh, I've been really lied to. I've known all my time, this whole time I've been lied to. I just didn't know like on that scale.
Yeah, moving from where I lived with a really diverse group of people who were also Christian, in a heavily black community. They were very religious, and then moving to where I did, primarily like white neighborhood, is I did find that the Christianity changed a lot. So like, when I was in this impoverished community through, redlining, legislation, etc., a primarily like diverse group of people, they would do church fundraisers, let's say, and it was everyone's welcome. They would do like cookout, like these giant ass cookouts with like 14 grills, and they'd have like a dude pull up with like a van and crack open the back doors with like a sound system, and you would just like hang out and like get food and hang out with everybody. When I moved to Lake Orion, everything became this very classist and quite racist thing where, it was you protect these people, not those people. So they would say, as an example, they would say, oh gosh, and it was what I like to call, it's a bad name for it, what I like to call like polite racism, right? As they would say like, oh, you're from Mexico. Isn't that interesting? And then you wouldn't be invited again. Or they'd be like, oh, you're from Syria. That's super cool. That's so interesting. And then they're having a barbecue and they didn't invite you again, or they would hold like fundraisers for clothes and stuff. And people from the city 7 miles down the street who are impoverished and need that stuff would show up and line up, and they would say, no. Sorry, this is just for our community. It's so interesting how all of those like religious categories and things like kind of play into like the zeitgeist of whatever the community is, which is why I've kind of rejected it indefinitely. I do know some religious leftists. I don't want to call any of them out except for Damon Garcia. If you don't follow Damon Garcia, he is the real thing. He is a very, very Christian content creator, but he is like the real deal socialist, commie, pinko, Jesus like type guy. And that really opened my mind to being open about religion, but me myself, I'm not personally,
Well, it's a pleasure to have gotten to know you since I've started streaming, and because it seems like until I started streaming that I actually get to start meeting people more on a personal level and seeing like how much we all kind of like deal with the same shit.
Oh yeah, I mean, especially, not to dox anybody, but especially like where we're both from, it's very, it's wild. It's absolutely wild. So yeah, I mean, I really appreciate getting to know other people from Michigan, and especially people that didn't grow up here, and like kind of learning how that shapes, the opinion, because Michigan's a wonderful place, but it's painted by a lot of weird stuff. So when did you move here?
2017.
Okay.
So I've only been here for a few years.
And you said California, like all of your life before that.
Well, yeah, for the most part. And I lived in Nevada for like 10 years, but Nevada and California aren't too dissimilar.
Yes, I've grown up in Michigan my whole life, and I moved to Lansing, I think September 9th of 2016, so I wasn't that far behind you. But the other side of the state is like way different, you know.
Yeah, when I first moved to Lansing, it was outside of town in an one of the little farm communities. And so my exposure to the city's drama was fairly minimalized. And when we bought our house in 2019. And we now live in like the very corners of the poor neighborhood. Like we're living right at the corner of a poor neighborhood where just south and east of us is wealthy. And how close I am to the capital and just like the exposure to being in a major city like a capital city like Michigan is, like Lansing, Michigan is. Wow. I mean, wow. I've never seen anything like it. And I mean, that's weird because I remember cop protests in Santa Cruz, protesting police, people protesting because they made a no loitering ordinance for downtown. So no one was allowed to loiter downtown Santa Cruz, which is where everyone used to do their busking. And so all the hippies down there had to sit in and sat down on the sidewalk, and all the cops came in. There was footage back. Oh man, this is when I was a kid. Footage of the cops going down the fucking sidewalk, swabbing people's eyes with mace and zipping them up with zip ties and just making them sit there with mace in their eyes just to fucking torture them for sitting there and refusing to leave. And so I've seen like cities doing fucked up shit, but like it's not like the city's actions here are so much different. The city's actions here are so much more, a lot of gentrification happening with properties and zoning and like, oh man, the redlining is insane. I'm just like, I was pointing to people as like, you want to see some wild stuff. Look at the difference between the county lines and the city borders of Lansing, East Lansing, and Ingham County and Clinton County.
Oh, 100%.
They are like, East Lansing literally has islands in other counties so that their tax brackets can go to those counties, but the votes stay to the city. Mm-hmm. And yeah.
No, go ahead.
No, you go right ahead. I would like to hear what you have to say, because I mean,
I worked for a credit union that I won't disclose. And they had it doesn't matter. I worked at Diamonddale, for a while at a credit union, which I believe is, I'm bad at directions. But Diamonddale is this very specific type city that has a lot of like farmland, a lot of open land, and all this kind of thing. And I worked at a credit union that serviced that area. And it was absolutely wild. And hearing the way that people talked about Lansing that lived just outside of Lansing was wild. Because if you listen to these people and you believe what they said, excuse me, you would believe that the second you hit the freeway exit into Lansing, you'd be met with a hail of gunfire, you know? And so really that's a coded way of saying like, but black people though, you know, that's all that meant. And I lived right in downtown Lansing. When I say right in downtown Lansing, I don't mean like peripherally. I'm not going to say where. Squiddedeer knows. I lived in the heart of downtown Lansing. And I saw all of the comings and goings. And it's just not that scary. Like, unless you're some, you know, some weird, like, I don't want to pathologize like paranoia, but like, you would have to be a pretty, like, you know, panicky person to ever feel in trouble down there. Especially with like the police presence and everything. And when I lived in downtown, it was just constant. Like, people would talk about, like, oh, I had to go downtown the other day and I saw a homeless person. And you're like, what? Okay. You saw somebody that was houseless. Like, is that, oh, they asked you for money? Was that very traumatizing to you? You know? And it just, I lived there. And when I would walk out of my front door to the apartment that I lived in, it was like a actually really cool, like, loft apartment that was overly expensive. But like walking out of there, I would have, you know, anywhere from like 1 to like 5 different houseless individuals like sitting out there in front of like a big business. And that business was really cool, and they had a rule of like not calling the cops. But like, it just it becomes this thing where you realize that other people's perceptions of an area are really colored by racism, even if they don't understand that that's the case. So like, most of the people that I would service when I was working at this credit union, I can say without a doubt that a lot of them were not shitty, racist people. They were not. It was that their perception was colored by a lot of outside, you know, kind of voices and stuff that would lead them to believe that how they felt about it was without race, if that makes any sense. You know, and that, like, that's a lot of what I dealt with working out there. And then now that I live in a place also outside of Lansing, but very close to it, is basically the same thing, but this community is a little more isolated. And anytime there's like a person of color out here that's not working like at a place, all of a sudden everybody like turns and looks at them and like watch them like walk into the business, and they're, you know, they pucker their buttholes and like pull their balls into their belly and like wait, you know, until they leave and get in the car and go away. And it's like, what fucking energy are you expending, you know, to do that? Ridiculous.
They just bring all this tense energy to, I've seen that a lot.
And Lansing, I think, is a sort of a catalyst for it for, I'm sure, a number of reasons, but
I mean, that's why I do the grocery shopping. I get the gas. I go,
yeah,
because like my partner can't go to any store and not get treated in some way like that, which is horseshit.
Complete horseshit. I mean,
it was.
Go ahead.
It was like I was telling, if you were here yesterday, when I was talking about when the cops were harassing one of my neighbors.
I was shit-faced drunk. I don't remember much of last night.
So
I saw the video.
A couple days ago,
I saw the video. Yeah.
4 cops were harassing my neighbor, and I don't even know why, for whatever reason, but he was just sitting on his porch, and it didn't look like there was anything to be harassing them. And I've seen him always hanging out on his porch, so it never seemed like a big deal. But it seemed like these cops were overreacting and making this huge scene. And when I called attention to it, the cops were coming after me, and I just fucking made a bunch of noise, and my entire neighborhood came out to my defense, which, in my opinion, I like when people talk about how place is scary. I don't know about that's the most heroic thing I've ever seen a neighborhood do in my entire life. People made some fucking noise in their neighborhood and they all came out and said, "Hey, why the fuck are these cops doing fucking harassing our neighborhood?"
Yeah.
You know? And
well, there's this whole push right now, like where we're, especially with the Buffalo shooting and all that stuff. The whole, all cops are bastards, whatever thing, is under a lot of scrutiny. And I might be an asshole for saying this, but I do think that there is, like, the scrutiny is justified. However, if you take like 2 seconds to look up, like, 1312 or, the ACAB thing or whatever, it's very clear that, to me at least, the whole principle of it is predicated on the idea that, number one, I think it was in 2005, there's a Supreme Court ruling that said that cops have no legal obligation to protect the public. And that's indisputable fact that happened.
yeah.
And then you look at the recent shooting in Texas, and you see the fact that these cops go into the school to take out their own kids and then arrest the parents that are now sick of waiting for the cops to fucking do something, going into the school, arrest them, pepper spray them. One of them was detained, like, ridiculous. It's very apparent to me, having dealt with cops my whole life, from living in Pontiac to being, out here, or where I used to live, and being perceived as like a white person or whatever, and seeing those interactions with the cops, is I can't think of a single time that I've ever called a cop or a cop has been called that has improved a situation. It might mitigate something, if you have a bunch of, a bunch of fighting drunk teenagers, the cops show up and they might disperse the crowd and everyone's scared to leave. But in any genuine crisis, look at any, and I'm serious about this to anybody in the audience, look at any single mass shooting, look at any documented mental health crisis, you will not find that the majority of them were benefited by cops showing up. Now, I'm not here to say that some sort of enforcement entity should not exist. I do believe that whatever happens after capitalism collapses, whatever, there's going to have to be some sort of arbitration group, so to speak. But the way it exists now just flat out does not work. And the fact that we fund them in the ways that we do, they have fucking assault rifles, they have fucking, in some cases, they have tanks, they have this crazy ass body armor. I can't think in the last 15 years of Lansing history, and I've only been here for almost 5. I can't think of, or almost 6. I can't think of a single fucking time that any of that shit was necessary. And I can't think of a single time in anywhere I've lived or in anything I've read that having like that level of bullshit it was ever necessary, and this whole pushing for more funding. What did Ted Cruz say the other day? That if they only had one entrance into is it Uvalde? Is that the name of the county or whatever? The elementary school? I gotta look it up now.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, the Rob's elementary school shooting. Ted Cruz was waxing on and off about, if there was only one entrance in and out of the building, and we just posted armed guards, at schools, it would fix it. And you're like, yeah, that famously great strategy of like bottlenecking hundreds of vulnerable children with maybe 4 bodyguards, that's gonna fix it, obviously. Like, you know, let's make it so they're all in one spot and can't get into the fucking place, so we can pick them off easier. I'm not anti-gun. I'm anti whatever this bullshit is. Is this whole, they're all jerking themselves off for NRA money. They're all waxing philosophical and presenting every possible non-solution so they don't have to address the gun thing. The fucking, I posted it on Twitter earlier. I think is it the police chief? I'm gonna look at it real quick.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was the I don't know, it was some cop spokesperson. I'm not gonna waste time. Oh, Texas Department of Public Safety director said, put it on the fault of the teacher, because the teacher,
of course,
saw the car crash and walked and propped open the door. And the implication is that the teacher was the one that's at fault for the shooting, because otherwise the doors would have been locked. That's not even ghoulish. That's levels of like craven, just bootlicking nonsense that I can't even fathom in my head. And I'm sorry for ranting. I'm so fucking sick of this, because next Monday it's gonna happen again.
Yep.
And it's gonna be the same fucking bullshit. You know, don't take away guns from people, but god damn it, there's a million ways that this could be done better.
And it's like
are not doing it.
There's so many things that get underplayed because there's the only response we have is police. Like, so for example, the school I used to work at is known historically for having a terrorist bombing back in the 1920s. And all that has done to the community has reinforced their love for authority. And so the school has that scenario where there's only really one entrance, and it's a double door entrance where there's a waiting room and then a glass wall before you can even get to the actual school. But the school itself is so reliant on police. They don't have any funding set aside for students who are not with an IEP, or just there's no there's no staff available for them. So an issue that gets brought up all the time is like, oh, well, these kids said they're gonna bring a gun to school. It's like, fuck, do you know how many fucking kids in my 4 years of working at an elementary school I heard a kid talk about wanting to bring a gun to school? Like, if every teacher reported every single time a kid said some dumbass shit because that's what they hear on the news every day, all these kids would end up in jail, because that's what would happen. They call the cops. You know what I mean? Instead of counseling the kids. And that's what the school would do. There was no solutions. And now,
go ahead, sorry.
No, and so it carries on even to like what happened at the East Lansing Mire with the fucking the shooting that happened there.
Oh no! Oh Jesus Christ!
Like how the cops randomly picked a person that met the very vague description and just chased them into the parking lot and shot them up.
And this goes. I call this the. Because it's a new thing. I call this the Kyle Rittenhouse defense. Is anybody you talk to that's like a shitlord about the Kyle Rittenhouse thing, is they always say, well, he killed a alleged pedophile and he killed this other person. Like, fine, whatever. And the same with this guy supposedly had a gun, whatever. There was no way to know that beforehand. So like, number one, you don't kill guilty people either. Like, it's against the fucking law, number one. And then number two, yeah, exactly. Carpe Pax says it really good. It's retroactive dehumanization. It's desperate logic. And that's exactly what it is. You had no way of knowing that person's past. You can't read their mind. It doesn't
They're
matter.
just bringing them out as executioners.
Yeah, you don't get to retroactively. You do not get to retroactively. I'm getting heated now. You don't get to retroactively justify the murder of another human being from information that you got after you killed them. That's not how it fucking works. You know? And we see it all the time. The George Floyd was a perfect example. Is when the cops pulled him over, there was all this preamble, they had files on him, whatever, like that is the case, but it's not real. It's a way to like it's a way to justify the murder of, in fascist rhetoric, an undesirable is exactly what it is. And when they went into that mire, and when they saw that guy, that's all that was. They were already itching to do the thing.
Mm-hmm.
You know? They were already ready to do it. And they got their fucking little tiny boners up, like squirting pre-cum to kill somebody. So I don't mean to be too graphic, but I mean, they're cops, I don't care.
Their job was to really, their duty was only to observe. Their duty was only to observe. And that's all they had to do.
Yep. And I don't have the patience to, not that anyone here is doing it, but I don't have the patience to debate that shit, because you're not a court of law, you're not a judge, you're not a jury. Like any of that conjecture, any of that preamble, even from a purely speculative citizen perspective, like, shut your fucking mouth. I'm not saying the courts are right either. It's just, shut up. You're not an expert. Let it play out, you know? And
how fast the department was to jump out with a whole bunch of propagandized videos. Yep. They're like, oh, look we've already been judging ourselves. Look, we look out for what's going on, you know?
They don't have that. Yeah.
Basically they got ahead of the message and misled the entire public on the facts way before the actual thing was constructed.
I think were you on that Reddit thread?
Maybe.
I think so, where I nobody knows my Reddit name, and that's by design. But I was posted on this Reddit thread, and they were already going in like, oh, he's guilty, he threw a gun under the car, you know, whatever, and all this stuff. And my only point of it was, like, the call never said that he had a gun. The call just said of a different person that matched the description. So, like, if he was concealed carrying without a license, and you're like a black man in America,
we don't know what the call still is.
Yeah,
they've never released the actual call. They've only released the dispatch.
Yeah. Yep.
What the information the cops knew.
But I mean, that's my point, is like, even if he was guilty of concealed carry, like, you didn't know that. And then triply so, throwing the gun under a car, he's unarmed. And then you shot him, what, fucking 7 times?
In the video, all the cop hears is he's got a gun and he shoots him in the back. That's all you see. He hears he's got a gun. Oh, he's got it. Boom, just lights him up in the back. Didn't even fucking care.
What? And all I can say to, like, I don't think there's any dissidents in this chat, but for posterity, is like, and this might be super offensive, and I apologize if it is, but let's say you had a friend that looked like, you know.
I do. I have family.
Yeah,
I have family, you know, that would have exactly met that description.
Yeah, you got brown friends, you got black friends, you got whatever it is, and they're an innocent person in a grocery store, chased into a parking lot, and shot 7 times.
I was 10 minutes away from that incident. I left the store 10 minutes prior to that happening.
Oh, Jesus Christ. I didn't know that.
I was that close.
Wow.
My I can't remember if it was my sister-in-law. They were kept at the store for like 4 hours. They weren't allowed to leave.
I know that there was like that lockdown. And I got a story about Oxford here in a minute, but all I can say to these people is like, what if it was one of your good ones? You know, what if it was the black friend that you had that's one of the good ones, and they get gunned down in a fucking parking lot for forgetting to pay for something, or like whatever it is. You know, your script is gonna flip real fucking quick. And that's what bothers me, is that whole thing. You know, it's always fine, it's always conjecture, it's always up for debate until it's somebody that's close to you. Diablo says our justice system only works on the basis that the defendant has a presumed innocence until proven guilty. We're so far away from that anymore. And that is true. Like, we're at the point where we're just... Yeah. That's...
Suspicion presumes guilt, and cops are allowed to be suspicious of everything.
Yep. I got pulled over in Sterling Heights, Michigan. I worked in Sterling Heights and lived in a town about an hour away. I got pulled over, and the cop pulled my driver's license, you know, because they, you know, license, registration, whatever, and saw that my name was funny. And I told him that my name was AJ, and he looked at my license and he said, "That's not what your license says."
That's like, you know, and honestly, that would be no different from me going to another country and saying my name is Mike when my name is Michael.
Right. And so, I mean,
like if I was to go to another country and do that and then freak the fuck out.
Right. And so I ended up getting detained for almost 2 hours on the corner of Hall and Shaner at a gas station. He tried to cuff me a number of times. I ran into the gas station. Thankfully, it was not to be racist about it, but run by Arabs. So I was like, "Oh, hey, my name's Oddnon. This guy's trying to arrest me." He's like, "All right, come on behind the counter. We're gonna lock the doors."
Brethren, save me!
Seriously, cousin. You know, that same thing. Which is a real thing, by the way.
Yeah.
But anyways,
people look out for each other, man. Fucking if they can, fuck the police.
Locked the doors, and the guy at the gas station. I didn't even think of this, and the guy that owned the gas station, or was working at the time, locked the front door, and he was telling the cop through the door. He's like, "Call," in a very thick Arabic accent. He was like, "Call your police chief. When your police chief gets here, I'll let you in." And so the police chief shows up and talks to the cop, talks to me, and you know, comes inside. And he's like, "Hey, you're free to go." It was an expired registration. I didn't know that my registration expired. And he's going to arrest me over it. And the police chief comes in, and he's like, "Hey, talk to my officer. I feel like I have a good grasp on the situation. You go ahead and drive home. I'm going to give you a fix-it ticket," which is also bullshit. "But go home, wake up in the morning, keep it with you, get your registration fixed. We're done here." And I was like, "What about this all?" And he's like, "I got it." And then he looks at me in the windows of my soul, and he goes, "I promise you, you will never again be pulled over in Sterling Heights ever again." And I was going over on the speed limit like 5 or 6 months later, and I get pulled over. The cop rolls the windows down. I hand him my ID and my registration. He walks back to the car, and he goes, "You're free to go." So I think they were just avoiding a lawsuit.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Because, yeah, that's basically, they're just trying to gain your confidence because you know that, you know. Yeah. They're afraid that there's a lawsuit involved for sure. They're always worried about that.
But yeah, we left that area the day before it happened. And I grew up right next to that high school. When I say next to, I mean like less than 7 miles. They were our rival school, like this whole thing. I knew a lot of people that went there. And when I compare how I was treated, they had me classified when I was a kid as like a potential school shooter. For reasons that were not very good. But when I think about that versus like what happened with that is if you look at the evidence of the Oxford High shooting, like totally preventable, and people want to rail against this like woke culture and that's why all this stuff's happening. It's really like they've been stripping away the rights of public schools like forever. And when you talk about when you want to talk about like preventing these tragedies, I had a really bad time in middle school because of the way that they classified me and all this stuff. But ultimately, I can say that as traumatic as a lot of that stuff was, I can at least see why it happened, and I can reason through it in a way that I say, okay, I can see how I was as a kid. I can see how that would relate to these, Columbine-esque symptoms, and I can at least like understand the logic. But the kid at Oxford, they had all of these like basically an outright manifesto in a journal entry talking about the voices don't stop and all this stuff, and we've stripped away so many protections that public schools have to like. I'm not saying you should have to look at a kid's backpack or like raid their locker, but like when I was in school, if somebody even suspected you of having weed, they would bring a dog in and they would find your locker and open it up and they would like check the stuff. I'm not saying that's the solution. It's just there were a lot more things in place to prevent these things, like as evidenced by the fact that they have been happening more and more and more and more. And I don't know. I don't want to purport to know what the solution is, because I don't. But it does seem to me that there is some sort of correlation with the way that we're treating public education. Not you or I, but like, GOP, so on and so forth. With this whole grooming thing, this whole CRT thing, all of this stuff is like specifically meant to discredit public education and pave the way for charter schools, private schools. Betsy DeVos was our education secretary of education, or whatever she was. She has a big stake in that, or did. And it's all been like part of this thing, because what's the best way, right, to hamstring the working class is take away public education. There are so many working class people that send their kids to school, public school, to learn and get an education. If you could hamstring that, if you can destroy that, you're going to create a lot of kids that can't go to school, and then a lot of families that can't work, and you're going to create this environment where it basically becomes this whole thing all the time. And that was kind of a rambling thing, but
No, so the school I worked at,
you were a teacher, right?
Yeah, for special needs.
Oh,
And
I was going to school for special needs education. So interesting.
And so the thing is like there's so much funding issues. Like they just don't have staff capable for dealing with it so much on the first level. And again, like you said, teachers' rights have been stripped away, so you're not allowed to assess either. And because schools now are so reliant on police, it comes down to like And because this is like, so the school I was at a fairly, you know, conservative farm community. So most of these kids are exposed to their parents' right-wing politics and a lot of gun culture, and they're not allowed to talk about guns at school. That's kind of like the rule at schools. You're not allowed to talk about guns. You're not allowed to talk about them or pretend to play with them or any of that, right?
Yeah.
But that's all kids have on their minds. They all play Fortnite, so they're all doing their dance moves, and it's all for a shooting game. You know, they're all, and so like the gun culture is already so embedded into their lives and how they have to hide it and protect it, even though they enjoy it and participate in it in the daily life. And kids are talking about shooting each other all the time, bringing a gun all the time, and teachers aren't allowed to assess. So, and there is no funding to deal with them all. So technically you're going to have to decide whether or not you have to call the cop on every single kid who says they're going to bring a gun or wants to pretend to shoot everyone because, well, that's all they hear on the news. That's all the games they play. Their brothers are playing Soldier of Fortune or fucking, what is it? Code of I can't remember the names of the new ones. You know, all those new ones, all the new shooting games. I only remember Soldier of Fortune being the most brutal one when I was a kid.
Yeah.
And it's like, you know, a lot of war games, you know, kids are still growing up in it. They know what the gun types are, you know?
Yeah.
So, yeah, schools have no means of even kind of defending against what is already embedded in almost all of their homes. There's nothing they can really do about it. And they're supposed to protect against people who act extreme out of it. Call of Duty. Thank you. Call of Duty. I don't know why I'm so bad with memory. Thank you.
Yeah. I mean, there's so the way I think about it is like, I got Grand Theft Auto 3 when I was in 6th grade. And that was like, at the time, the big one, you know, because it was 3D and it was hyper realistic. It was not hyper realistic. But you know, everyone was freaking out about it. And it's interesting because I played it and I played it like a lot, and never at any point did I think like this is good and fine like to do, you know? And the video game thing, I think, is a valid point of the argument, if nothing more than the fact that it permeates these kids' lives. So you have these kids.
No, I'm not
parents.
blaming the games. Yeah.
No, I know. Yeah. It's just like you have these know-nothing parents that, to their credit, if you can call it that, is they're, probably working full-time, dual-income household. And their kid says, and I worked at fucking GameStop, for Christ's sake. Like, I saw it every day. Is like these, dual income households where the parents are just buying their kids whatever the fuck they want to shut them up so they can go to work and come home and like have family dinner, whatever. It's a dual responsibility to me, or so it seems to me, that not talking about these things is not working, like, clearly. And having these kids in school where they're talking to themselves about these things, and I'm not saying that kids radicalize themselves in some weird, like, thing. It's more so that without the intervention of some sort of role model or whatever, whether that be a teacher or a parent or whatever, it's not the games that are radicalizing kids. It's the kids that are spending the time playing the games, and getting in the chat rooms with these super racist people that are talking about, kill all, pick one. And there's nothing to mitigate that. When I started playing Um, World of Warcraft, way back in the day. And Lonerbox has a good video on this. I joined a guild, and I think it came out when I was 18. And I played it on release, and never had like a big issue or anything. But I was joining these guilds to play with people as an 18-year-old with all of these, 4chaners and these, racist, piece of shit people that I thought were my friends because we were in a guild together. We were playing games together. They would listen to me, about my problems, or I could like vent to them. And 18 is not that old. That was like the bar for friendship for me at the time. So when I'm disaffected from my parents, and I'm in these environments and talking to these people, the game itself did not do anything to me. It was 100% about the people that were there that were, I don't know if they were doing it knowingly or whatever, but effectively indoctrinating me into this weird racist worldview because they were the only outlet that I had. And you want to talk about like schools and parents and all this kind of stuff, like it does start at home, not at the weird Christian way, but like it's all these parents that don't fucking talk to their kids, or they have a broken home or whatever, which super sucks and that's awful. I don't want to demonize those people, but there's no support structure, and then they find those outlets somewhere else, and then they just kind of follow it because they're kids. Like it's not a hard equation to me, having
Right.
been through that. To see how that plays out, it's not difficult. And
So
we these parents, especially the conservative ones, they bitch and complain about public schools, and these teachers are radicalizing their kids, they're grooming their kids, they're this woke leftist CRT agenda. It's all bullshit. You don't take care of your fucking kid. That's really what it comes down to. Whether you can or you can't, whatever, like I'm not going to purport to know anybody, you don't take care of your child, and somebody has to. And these teachers, I never graduated, but having gone through a lot of the classes and stuff, you learn the warning signs pretty damn early. And you have these people that are trained to find this, to see this pattern happening, and then you strip them of their ability to intervene, and you're also not going to fix it. Is it any goddamn wonder that any of this is happening? I'm not saying that like school teachers have this massive responsibility to like parent the kids.
No. So that's what I was trying to explain. That's exactly what I was trying to explain. Is like I'm not against the games at all. I grew up playing Quake. I played all the shooters and was all about blowing people up into gibs, and racking up frags, and that it's basically it's how conditioned our country is to the gun culture. It's like gun culture exists, but then schools are not even allowed to say the word gun.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So they've been completely disarmed from even helping kids with it. And because there's no funding to deal with them, it becomes immediately a decision between this is a threat to the school, we need to call the police on them, or, well, they're just not that bad yet. Might as well just put them back in class because otherwise it's just going to bring the police and completely make it worse for them at home. Like all there is going to be is immediately making it worse at home. There's no solution to make it better unless the parents take them to the doctor or take the act to actually help the kid get the care they need. And it's like you're saying that parents aren't taking care of their kids. There's so much of that, and schools have been stripped from being able to help students that need it, despite their parents not actually taking hand in helping it happen. You know what I mean? If parents don't sign the paperwork, it's not happening.
Absolutely.
And I'm so sorry. I'm not reading the chat. It's a lot for me to read. That's why my brain's scattered. I don't want to get too much distracted. I have like my thoughts in the head, but I want to talk about, it's like, I understand guns. If my position is I'm a pacifist. I don't own a gun. I don't plan on owning a gun. I'm also disabled. Shooting a gun could cause me to faint. I'm not gonna, and I'll put myself, and that will put me at far more harm than if I was to be, fleeing or trying to do something with my family. There's other things I have to do because it's me. But living in Michigan over the last couple years have really changed my understanding, because 2 years ago I started seeing people in pickup trucks with all their boys loaded up in the back with their arsenal. And that was like a real thing. And I don't want to be too hyperbolic, but it's like, I've seen the what was it? The Piano Man? I can't remember the name of the movie. The one about the Holocaust and it's just, it has these indescribable paramilitary formations where you see the pianist. Thank you, the pianist. Yeah, and I remember just having these parallel fucking visions of saying, look how they are militarizing before our eyes and nothing's being done about it.
Yeah.
And I understood at that point. It's like, fuck, I kind of wish I had one, because holy shit, one day if they actually, like when Jan 6th happened, technically under the hyperbolic eras of thinking that they had perceivably succeeded at some marginal level, Michigan was heavily involved with a lot of that, more than most states, in my opinion. Michigan had so much of a foothold on that mentality and takeover. That's why it was like California, Michigan. There's like a few states where their capitals were hit the worst.
Yeah.
And Michigan was hit fucking hard. And seeing it firsthand was like, oh fuck. I was thinking I need to make a plan to flee the country, because I have a mixed family, and it could be any day that they pull up in front of our house and drag us out, because holy fuck, that's how close we're getting.
There was that moment, I forget what day it was. It was just after George Floyd. They did this, what the fuck did they call it? Operation Gridlock. I think is what they called it. And I remember texting my friends and just being like, hey, we're laying low, we're in the apartment, we're safe. I don't know if there are gunshots or fireworks, but our mattress was on the floor, and so I felt pretty safe. We were just like, we're gonna go to bed early. It was like 8:00, and we, after dealing with it all day, we were just like, we need to like get down and like lay in the bed because it's low, it's below all the windows. We saw those dudes with assault rifles. They had they had a mannequin of content warning here for sexual assault. They had a mannequin of our governor that was like dressed up like her in her ads that she used to run on TV, and they had like a bloody genital area, and said that they wanted to SA her to make some point or something. And they're driving around with this shit and gridlocked the entire city. The only hospital. Yeah. They had the Trump Bridge guy park his Trump Unity Bridge in the only emergency hospital lane in the entire fucking city, and they gridlocked everything around the hospital. and there were dudes marching around with assault rifles and all this stuff. And one of the I have pictures of it, but there's one of these things that really blew my mind. Is after that happened, there was a counter protest. So all of that happened. The cops did nothing, and these dudes were pointing their guns at the windows of people living in the houses that they were parking in the parking lots, like around to like walk to
Blocks from my house, by the way. This is blocks from my house.
Oh yeah.
Yes.
So I was on the corner. I won't say it here. I'll tell you later. But yeah, I was right there. And
This is blocks from my house. I'm like, yes.
yeah. And they were pointing guns like this, like like literally aiming with fingers on the trigger. I don't know about the safety or whatever. You know, I'm a gunny guy, like I know that stuff, but it's scary as shit, like all through the day, starting at 10 a.m. And we tried to ignore it because my wife was working out, you know, working at home. And so the day after all of that bullshit, and we slept in our bedroom on the floor with the door locked, and like locked everything up, you know? And I can't even say that I was scared. Like, it was just so much so quick that you just don't even have a chance to like think about it.
We were we never put up any signs in our yard because we were afraid of being targeted.
Yeah, I've heard that multiple times. And so a couple days later, there was a counter protest for, you know, the death of George Floyd. And there's a place out here called Olympic Royal. They're like this Coney style, like awesome place. And the food is like dog shit.
It's so fucking cheap. It's the cheapest shit in fucking town, man. It's amazing.
We roll up there and I get a 6-piece tender meal with a large fry, a large Diet Coke, and 4 Coney dogs, like for the next couple days. And then we get, my wife gets an olive burger and fries, and like 2 other things. And they'll be like, all right, that's $19. Please pull around. And you're like,
yeah,
jeez.
That's like $40 at any other place, man.
Yeah, and it's just great food. So we're excuse me, leaving the apartment and like driving down the road, and we get to like where I'm at. Like you go down the main street and you like go down and you start to see like the Capitol. And the counter protest, there's a bunch of these people on the Capitol lawn, and they're like singing and they're dancing and they have signs. And comparative to like what it was before, this is like a fucking kindergarten classroom. These people are having a great time, and they got their signs up and stuff. And the cops are all lined up on the other side of the road. And we're like coming down to like the light, and we stop at the light. And I'm just watching it. And I didn't know what was going to happen. And nothing, nobody crossed the street. Like there was no anything. And the cops just started firing tear gas onto the Capitol lawn. And everybody started to scatter and scream. And that's when the riot happened. And by riot, I mean that from what I could tell, we drove down later that night, like 2 hours later maybe, after hearing all the chaos. There was a bus or several buses driven in from East Lansing that had like all like white kids in it. And they got unloaded into downtown, and they flipped a car. They smashed in the window of a bank and started vandalizing businesses. And like I saw it, I saw it happen. And the next day, it was, you know, BLM protest goes crazy, and I have a picture of the overturned car
Oh,
Uh,
I know the whole thing though with the overturned car. The stories get told that she was driving into the crowd. She wasn't plowing through the crowd. What happened was this group that you're talking about selected her car, pulled her out of it. She was fine. She was never even harmed. They just pulled her out of the car and then flipped it over to get the cops fucking rioted. Like they were instigating overreach.
Yeah,
And
yeah, fucking crazy town, the whole thing. Yeah, I
and
don't even-
those buses of kids have come back several times and started fights. Anytime that there have been any form of organizing in the capital. I can't remember what was it recently. There was one that was just recently. Broke out in all kinds of fucking fights.
Yep. And what's funny to me is we have, because it's it's a free country, whatever, air quotes, is we have lots of right-wing protests on the Capitol, like virtually every weekend. We have the honking recently where they were like driving around like honking their cars and stuff, and nothing happens. But 9 times out of 10, if there's a larger demonstration that's for some sort of progressive thing, it becomes like this, the cops show up, they shoo people away, or conversely, these counter-protesters show up, like, out of nowhere, and start, like, harassing people. When I say harassing, I mean, like, pushing them, spitting on them.
They don't live here either. The people who are protesting are majority are locals, and then the people who are counter protesting, like these supremacist groups, are not from here. They're coming in from other counties.
Yeah.
They're literally
like
being bussed in.
Yeah. Yeah, no,
I'm trying to find a picture of the actual protest that happened not so long ago.
Well,
Anyways, go ahead. Anyways.
Well, it sounds so like conspiracy, like crazy town, nonsense. But when you see it happen in real time, it
right.
Like breaks your brain where you're like,
They try to tell you all the time that this is such conspiracy shit, but it's like this is real stuff. And like another thing was like how. Like the complete cover up of or not even cover up, but the proclaimed innocence for the police who murdered that man in the jail, which sparked a whole bunch of protests too that they have never faced anything for. Like it's like with the guys who tried to kidnap the governor, when they got arrested for their plot.
Yeah.
For wanting to buy bombing materials to blow out the bridges so that they could basically do a Gotham City on the fucking Capitol. And
well, those dudes that got caught. Sorry.
They're all getting off with it now because the FBI were supplying them with all of the fucking means of purchasing the bombs.
Yeah, that whole thing. I'm not for the feds. And I'm going to state this very clearly. It's like,
no, that's what I'm saying, conspiracy, but it's like, but why is this continuously being unaddressed? And
well, they were, so the feds like let them on. It absolutely was.
Right.
It absolutely was entrapment. And I will defend that point until the day I die. Fuck those guys. But it was entrapment by the feds. My concern comes from the fact that these people were so easily seduced by like a super casual idea of like kidnapping and killing the governor. Like that's insane to me. And aside from that, all those chats that were leaked and the channels that were leaked were like even before the feds were involved. They were already planning like, do I think the feds should win? And no, they should have already prosecuted it like from the start. Like I don't want to start going into the level of prosecuting people for thought crimes or whatever. But this was not that. Like, they had already been planning ways to do
Right.
it. And I'm no defender of the state. Like, let's not get it twisted. But like, Jesus H, there's a lot to be said about the fact that on two fronts is that they were doing that for so long before any intervention, and then they could not mount a defense without the FBI intervention is a failure in our legal system. They already had the guns. They already talked about murdering her. And I have my own issues with Whitmer, but it's not I don't know. I don't know the solution. I don't want to talk myself into a corner. It's just like,
No, I get it.
There's so much to that is just such a failure on the part of the legal system.
Well, basically, the way I see it is like this: is they did that protest where they came into the Capitol fully armed because that's what they were legally allowed, because the Michigan laws allow you to open carry in the Capitol building, and because they did this huge staged, the Constitution is bigger than you purity thing,
right?
The government's response wasn't, hey, how can we help our government be a little bit safer from this by not allowing these guns in here? And they decided, well, you know what? Let's teach them a lesson and fucking, exercise our deep state form authority on them and fucking just nail them to the floor for daring to step up against us,
Yeah, you're never going to get the results you want from the carceral state. It's always going to be a reluctant ambivalence. So anytime that you have some sort of felon that goes to prison for some
basically
heinous crime.
Basically, it's like this. They didn't want to prevent a crime. They wanted to bust a crime.
Right. And so, if you go to prison on even something that you did do. So let's say you rob a liquor store, let's pretend. And you go to jail for 5 years or whatever the charge is. You found guilty. There's all the evidence against you. I don't believe that bullshit lie where they're like, we'll send you to prison, you're just going to find out how to be a better criminal. I don't buy that 100% of the time. What I do buy is that there's the recidivism rate is ridiculous. And so if you get popped on a crime, you're sent to prison and you're kept from the general population, you're housed with these other alleged criminals. You're not being supported. You don't have a support structure. You're being relegated away from, humanity, for lack of a better term, and you're just kept absent from society. Like, what does that do to somebody? We have a ton of studies that show that, and you look at something like the Norwegian prison model, where you get put away, but you get like a support group, twice a day. You have to learn a trade, to keep you busy. I don't even necessarily agree with that, but it's definitely like a better alternative to what we have. I know a million people, not literally a million, but I know a number of people that went to jail and they get out of jail and they do the thing that got them in jail again. And whatever that rate is, it seems to me that it doesn't fucking work. What does it mean when we do we still have the highest prison population? We have a prison population that surpasses the population
by
of
margins,
most countries, right? Or some
by
countries.
margins. Our incarceration rate is ridiculous. But it's like that too.
2 million people in the United States that are imprisoned. 500 increase over the last 40 years. That's
And-
fucking bonkers.
And the thing is too is like once you get a record that you have to disclose, you are presumed guilty in any police interaction. You are presumed unqualified for almost any job. They make sure that keep you in such a desperate position that if what you had done to get arrested was a form of trying to earn some form of income to survive, you're probably going to end up be forced into that desperation again. They want to ensure that. That's kind of like the whole idea of the prison complex. They want to put you into such a systematic position that you'll be always desperate enough to commit the same crimes. That's why they love those 3 strike laws, because then they could fucking get you for life. They love it when they can say, oh yeah, we've busted them for robbery 3 times in a row. They never got creative on how to fucking survive. So, cha-ching. And they just make you a number and they put you in a cell. And that's their goal. That's the whole system's goal, is to strip you from any wealth and ability to survive and keep you marked so that you will continuously be desperate. And then, like I said, whether or not you committed a crime or not, just by association, being accused can be all you need that happens again. You're always put on it's like you're, once you get, it's like, say like you're living through life and when you start out life, you have like a 6-sided or a traditional 6-sided dice. And then you get arrested once and then they exchange that for a D20. And now your odds of surviving have insurmountably gone down, because now they have all these opportunities to continuously frame you up again, whether or not you did it or whether or not anything happened. It's just the conditioning.
Yeah. I mean, I often wonder about things like that on the basis of, how many people. I'm an Arab American, but like, there aren't a whole lot of those people that get caught in that system that look like me. There are some, and those people absolutely deserve justice, and they deserve to have a more humane, interaction. Like, I'm not trying to say that, yeah, you all get it, but it always strikes me, having been a hiring manager at various jobs and stuff, and wanting to hire people that have been felons or whatever, because they, had the credentials and they were fit for the job. And you put it up to corporate, they say, no way, Jose. And they don't look like me. They don't look like you. And we all know that it already like disproportionately affects people of color or minorities, but it's more than that. It's designed from top to bottom to be that. Yep. And the what did I say before? The melanin deficient people, they get caught in that system, absolutely have my sympathy. But the thing that I wish more people would realize is that this is a detriment to everybody. It doesn't matter what your skin color is. Mm-hmm. This affects
class
all
war,
of us,
man.
because
this is the class war.
Yeah, if you're a person of color, it disproportionately affects you. If you're a white person, you are fodder, right, to justify that happening to people of color. Like, it literally hurts every single man, woman, everyone between, and child in this country that this goes on. Every time there's a mass shooting, fucking what's her dumb shit name? Candace Owens,
Oh,
one of the worst people to ever exist, posted that whole thing about how the Texas shooter was trans to push the anti-trans shit, even though when she posted it, it was already thoroughly debunked. You know, all of that shit hurts every single person in this country. And it's that old Union saying, what is it? Harm to one of us is harm to all. And that's exactly how I feel. Even if you're a fucking virulent, racist piece of shit, everything that you propagate as that person hurts you as well. Because let's be honest, like, a lot of the rich people don't have to participate in racism directly because they already made it. They already won.
right.
They already got
Right.
that shit on lock. They don't have to worry about it.
The people who
All they have to do is not say the N-word, and they're fine. You know,
the people who are a success in the current system, you know, who are successful or, you know, can survive the current system without being harmed in a systemic way. They, you know, there's no, they love the idea that they can always point down and say that they deserved it. You know, they always want to point down and say, well, it's because they did this, because see, obviously I never did that.
Right.
And
exactly.
all you had to do was just work a little bit harder and I got out. Obviously they just didn't do that. And they love putting that position down where it's like, you know, I was raised in a well brought up house and, oh, well, you know, maybe we had to move a couple times. So I know what it's like to be poor for a minute. And, what would they say? You know, I ate boxed macaroni. I've heard them say that. I've eaten boxed macaroni before. And I'm like, oh, really? You've eaten it before?
Oh, God forbid. And you know, it's one of the things that drives me nuts so much about like this racism and all this stuff that's kind of like bred into the system, whether you like it or not. Like, I know a lot of really wonderful people. I'm proud to say that like none of my real life friends are, not a single one of them are racist or bigoted or anything, but mostly like other family members I have, or, you know, things like that, is a lot of them, I would not call them a racist, but they do a racism. You know, saying one thing doesn't make you racist. Doing the racist thing over and over and over makes you a racist. And it's fascinating to me how successful that just layering these platitudes and these sayings and stuff, you know, become part of like the cultural zeitgeist. You know, if you read like, yeah, I'm sure you have, but like if you read like David Graeber, or if you read like, you know, even parts of Foucault and stuff like that, where they talk about like the cultural zeitgeist, and stuff like that. That's really broad. I sound like a goddamn moron, but they do touch on that, and it really is about like if you repeat the same thing over and over and over and over, especially to like children or to people that are disenfranchised and things like that, it's really easy to paint like a boogeyman. And I've been really guilty of that in my life, where, you know, for me, my extended family, you know, would point at like, oh, well, all the jobs are gone. You know, they were factory workers, and all the jobs are gone because Mexico took them. But like, Mexico didn't like come here and like pluck the jobs away and take them across the border. You voted for the person that legislated them away. You know, it's this whole thing where people find the scapegoat and don't realize that they're just parroting, you know, the talking points. And that's what bothers me the most, is so many good people are just taken because they are disenfranchised. They have lost their jobs. They can't feed their families, and these people that are doing this rhetoric, neocons and so on, they know that, and they're just taking advantage of it at the detriment of the people that are harmed the most.
Well,
Mass war.
and it's so funny because it's like Michigan is so embroidered with that because of the auto industry.
Yes.
And Lansing specifically because, well, I mean, if you look at how Lansing was
Pontiac,
built,
yeah.
Lansing was built like a feudal fucking kingdom. The whole city's built around the factory,
You know how many
and
houses I looked at to rent, and they had they called them multi-family homes, and they were stacked buildings that had 2 or 3 bedrooms on a single floor with a bathroom, and those bedrooms were like half of a normal bedroom because they had all those people like hoarding in the area just to work at the fucking factory. Yeah.
yep, yeah, and well, so like what had ended up happening is as the workers unionized and stood up against the auto industry, the auto industry had to adjust how they managed their class war to maintain their employees and stuff. So they were able to do it after the unionization occurred, they were able to do it legislatively. You know what I mean? And as that slowly slid away, that's when they, packed up and moved to Mexico. I mean, GM straight up shut their shit down, moved it to Mexico. And now they try to establish themselves as a local business still, when the property that used to be the factory is now a parking lot for all the cars that they can't sell yet. Like, it is wild driving by the old GM factory and just seeing it as a giant, enormous lot with 10,000 plus cars just strewn across the bones of the factory.
Completely. It's unfathomable. It was one of the things when we first moved here, and I was like driving, on West Saginaw, and they have that overflow parking and just an abandoned lot. And I asked my partner, and I was like, what, is that? And she's like, oh, and she told me the story of it. And even growing up in Pontiac and like seeing that happen in real time, it was still like way crazier. Because here in the capital, it's the capital of the state. So you would assume that it would be more taken care of,
Right.
more.
Oh, yeah. It literally is the bones of the factory because it's like overgrown plants. It's not even paved. It's like they don't even give a fuck how they stored the cars on this shit.
Yeah.
Like, they don't even care. It's just shit. It is wild.
It's like you don't even get to mourn the loss. Like, it's just overgrown bullshit with, property held for speculative value. Basically.
With a security fence to protect all the property or the cars that are on it now. Right.
Or in the case of, down on West Saginaw, they just have that, the girder. And they don't maintain actually, I think they started maintaining it. But I remember when we moved here, there was this big barbed wire fence like around the whole thing. And they had, it wasn't caltrops, but it was like broken rocks. Somebody was like spreading across it, like just to make sure that the homeless
I thought those were
people
concrete barriers that have slowly eroded into rocks.
Yeah.
That's what I thought they were. I couldn't quite figure out what they are.
They had a guy out there. I saw him one time. There was a guy out there that had like a vest on. I mean, it could have been anybody, but I'll never forget. He had like a bucket, like a giant, and I mean like a big bucket, and just taking a shovel and like grabbing a bunch of shit out of it and like spreading it across the parking lot. And the only thing I could fathom that was for was to make sure that either A, nobody could drive on it, or B, that homeless folks couldn't come out of, downtown Lansing to sleep there. So, I to be fair, I don't know, but that was a weird day.
Yeah. I tell you, it's and it's funny because it's like, I've lived in California where it's still considered like the golden state, and the road conditions are vastly superior there, but also their tax rates are ridiculous. But I mean, well, shit, man. What I worry about living in Michigan is how the infrastructure has been crumbling for so long. Like that bridge we saw in, what was it, in Ohio? That bridge that collapsed? I can't remember where that was. Or was it Wisconsin?
I forget.
Can't remember.
I remember seeing it, but I didn't pay much
I'm waiting for that to happen here, man. I'm waiting for that to happen here. I look at these bridges and they're rusted to shit, man. I am so nervous about the petty bridges because I have to live by these damn inner city freeways. So when I cross these petty bridges, man, I'm like, I'm a big guy.
Yeah.
I'm looking for rust. It's scary.
Man, there's been a couple times I cross a few of them out here and I'm like, I don't know about that.
These petty bridges.
Lopsided. Maybe we'll turn around and navigate it a different way.
Yeah.
But yeah, I had a great time. I was a little nervous. I'm not good at talking about myself or really talking in general, but I had a good time, and I would like to come back sometime.
Oh, awesome! Definitely. I know we ended up talking about fucking how much the police suck, which is just, I think it's the only way we can actually cope with the conditions right now. We have to continuously talk about how horrid the police state is, and how
the thing that Mr. Rogers allegedly said is look for the helpers. The only way you survive this shit is find people that want to harbor a community, find kind people, gather them together, and even if you don't have the chance to organize or whatever, like your mental health, if you can't get yourself straight, you can't fix anything else. Find people that love you, build a community, and start there. There's no reason for doom and gloom, as easy as it is. Just find loving people, band together, and figure it out from there, which is what I've done. I have some of the best friends in real life that anybody could ever ask for. I have some of the best friends I've ever met online, and maintaining that community has been basically the only lifeline for survival, these last 2-3 years. So, try not to despair, and yeah.
Yeah, wonderfully said, my friend. Yeah, thank you. I would say, again, tell people who you are, where they could find you, and if there's I don't know. I guess if there's anything else, I like I said, you're amazing, Oddnon, and I mean, the amount of discrimination we have to struggle throughout the system is fucking. It's life damaging, and
we're gonna get it though.
We are, and that's the thing. I think the more, like I said, thank you for coming and talking to us about some of it, because I relate to it. I believe a lot of people do, and if we see it more as an individual issue and more as a systemic issue, the more it's going to be addressed. So, thanks again.
Yeah, absolutely. And I did my Oddnon thing. That's my Twitch, where I just play games poorly and have a good time. But also, if you want to contact me, buy my comic book, chat, add me on Discord, whatever. I did post my Twitter, which is twitter.com/oddnon1, because I registered Oddnon and forgot the password. But that's where you can find me. And go ahead and shoot me a follow. You can DM me, whatever. So, yeah. All right. I got a.
Well, thank you again for coming on and sharing with me, my friend. It was great. Oh, and yeah, I'll definitely have you come on again. Thank you again.
Yeah, great time. I'll talk to everybody later. Thank you for having me, and thank you so much, chat. And we'll see you later.
Bye.
Oh,
can
yeah,
be
there's
a
a but.